It's such an honor to be right after the king of the Umbraco festivals, and all around fantastic guy, Adam. I'm so disappointed that you didn't pronounce Cogworks in Polish. I actually tried to go to Google Translate to see if I could find a translation, but no luck. Anyway, I have so much to show you, so I'm going to speak a little fast. Because it's my first time here, I thought I would give a very short background on what is Umbraco, what do we believe in, etc. Then, of course, an update on what's going on. And then finally, some sneak peeks of weird things we're doing as well. Because I thought this is not going to be recorded. Fantastic. Anyway, a little background on Umbraco. Then our mission is to help you deliver what we call delightful digital experiences by making Umbraco friendly, simpler, and social. And what it basically means is we want people to make beautiful things online. And we want to do that by making sure that Umbraco is a nice place to be, both when it comes to the software, but also when it comes to the community and when you interact with us as a company. Then in the old days, when we were young and naive, we said we wanted Umbraco to be simple, which is bollocks, because what's simple for me might be complex for you. But one thing we can do is try to make every release of Umbraco a little bit simpler in some ways, and that's kind of what we keep doing. We love to iterate on what's there, rather than jam-pack the product with features. And then finally, social. It's not fancy social media thing. It's we make things that connects people. Again, both in the software, but also in the community. We really think that interacting with each other as humans is a very big part of what Umbraco is. Then you're going to see some numbers later, but our plan is, or hope, dream, is that in a couple of years we'll have 1 million live sites of Umbraco running. And we believe that Umbraco Cloud is so good that 10% of them would be using the cloud. Then we thought, that's an insanely big number. We can't manage that. But then we said, okay, then let's say 10,000. Then we were like, if only 1% of Umbraco installations use the cloud, then we made something that's crappy. That's not good. So if we're ever going to reach those numbers, it's going to be incredible. The way we see what you could call commercial open source is this idea that if Umbraco should keep evolving, then it needs to be a sustainable project. And that's in two senses. One, that the company behind is sustainable, but also that the project itself keeps being sustainable as an open source project, that we don't have multiple branches of Umbraco, etc. So the way we do that, because people always ask us, how do we make money on open source? The answer is you don't. You can't make money on something you give away. So you need to find other ways to make a living. And the way we make a living is primarily through supporting the products to partners and by driving our cloud platform. And that turned out to be a great idea because we are the biggest CMS on the Microsoft stack globally. That's kind of insane, and that's both in numbers and in growth. The small dots you see in the background is installations in a single day. So that's 24 hours of installations, roughly 1,100 installations every single day. All these numbers, we're now more than 500 partners globally. We are almost 4,000 certified developers, and we're almost 250,000 people in the Umbraco community that's active. If we just said anyone visiting it would be over 1 million, but we like to say that it's people who at least have 25 sessions a year on our, and that's almost 250,000. And again, this number, we are rapidly approaching 500,000 live Umbraco installations. So that's insane. And what I love about organizations using Umbraco, it's kind of two different types of organizations. One is what you could call If you're a diplomat, you call them cost-sensitive organizations. But smaller or medium-sized organizations that actually pick Umbraco because it's free, which is super cool. And then we're also seeing a movement from what I would like to call Fortune 5 million, which is basically companies, larger companies that are buying their third or fourth CMS, and they tried CMSs that could do everything and found out that it didn't work for them. And then they are slowly realizing that technology is the easy part, but what really matters is the people involved in the projects. And in that sense, what we're doing in Umbraco is really what works. At least that's what we believe, always believed in, and we are seeing more and more people buying into that. And again, it's not just small companies; it's also really some of the largest companies in the world, which I think is really wonderful. There's a lot of talk about diversity, but there's actually also great diversity in both having tiny organizations or even stuff that's not organizations. My mom still uses Umbraco, and then all the way up to some of these large companies. And while they might not be active or as active in the community as we could dream of, they are actually making Umbraco possible because they are contributing with old cold cash. And that's wonderful as well. That said, though, there's a user group in the UK, Bristol, and they actually had a meetup at the Dyson headquarters, which is kind of cool. So you actually see big organizations using Umbraco and at the same time opening up their office, understanding the importance of people. And speaking of that, then the whole background for what we believe in Umbraco is this idea that everybody says you have to succeed online. Nobody knows really how. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You know, in the old days, if you were producing furniture, you really just needed to focus on your craft and your supply chain and your retail, and then you would be doing really fine. Now, even that kind of companies, they need to succeed online. And what I find so tragic is, in a world where that's the requirement, it's so sad to see so many people being frustrated about their digital platform. And I believe it's because, as I mentioned, way too many organizations focus or hope that technology will save them. And of course, that's not the case. But when people believe in that, they tend to buy into technologies jam-packed with features, which leads to complexity, and it rarely works for them. It's this idea that if you actually have a piece of software that will solve everything for you, then it would basically mean that almost all organizations are alike, and that's of course not the case. And if these type of tools then are very flexible, well, and then the level of complexity, the things you need to understand in order to master the product, really becomes a PhD education in itself. I love the idea of simple tools instead, something you can actually understand and then bend to your needs. So if you actually have a team that are what I would call digital craftspeople, then they can take a simple tool and they can actually make it very advanced and capable of doing most things for even the most complex of organizations. And this is not something that I've said. It's not like I'm a genius or anything. It's common sense. Here's a tweet. Notice that it's actually from 2011. This is 6 years ago. And I love this quote. It's from a CMS conference. And it's someone saying that a successful digital project is basically a little bit about technology, but mostly about the people involved. So if we can have a piece of technology that would be Umbraco that actually can be a driver towards a great ecosystem and great community of people who really love to make amazing things for customers online, then I think we are actually much closer to finding something that works for a lot of people, rather than what we see too much, which is these huge systems with too many to half-assed features. And again, this is not only me who says that, this is Tony Byrne. He's one of the leading independent experts in CMS. He's a CMS analyst at a company called Real Story Group. He recently did a blog post where he basically said, everybody's focusing on marketing features and other things, and everybody has more or less forgotten about that the C in CMS actually stands for content. So who actually does the basics? And of course, I'm very disappointed that he didn't say everybody but Umbraco. But we need to educate him. So anyway, basically, you can boil it all down to we believe that the real magic in digital projects comes from humans, not technology. And that's basically what we believe in and what drives us as a CMS vendor. And with that, then I kind of divided this into four or five parts that I believe make up what Umbraco is. And of course, we got the CMS, we got the cloud, and we got the community. So if we just dive into them really quickly, then in terms of the CMS, we really try to have this very tight, very lean core, but that actually does things very well and is really good at being a CMS. And that means that we have a semantic data model with version content, basically meaning that any type of content, more or less, that makes sense that humans edit can be put into the system. And of course, everything in the system is versioned. On top of that, a granular security model that's become even better with 7.7. Ooh, more on that later. Then, of course, a editor experience that's not only user-friendly but also really performant. Not only in how many milliseconds does it take for a page to appear for the editor, but also the flow they have in their everyday work. Remember that every time we as a developer, let's say we as HQ or the company behind Umbraco, we spend 1 hour working on a feature in Umbraco, then there might be thousands or tens of thousands of hours used by developers implementing that features, and potentially millions of hours spent from editors actually working with the feature. So this part just needs to be bang on. Then of course the delivery engine needs to be fast, needs to be able to scale. And then finally, almost everybody says that they have open APIs, but Umbraco has been around for very long. The current APIs are between 6 and 4 years old, depending on which part of the API you use, and it's really mature now. And it's not that they don't evolve. We do a lot of changes behind the scenes, but the basic way you use these open APIs are getting really matured, and that also means that throughout the years, it's been easier and easier to upgrade Umbraco because the APIs doesn't change, and we break as little as possible. So with that, then Umbraco 7.7 is around the corner. How many have played with the beta? Raise your hands. Ooh, this is good. In Umbraco, we use something called this semantic versioning, which means that if we don't really break anything, then we are not allowed to raise this number, which means we're still stuck on 7. So that's why we like to call these minor versions major minors, because they are actually jam-packed with features. So let's just go through some of these new features, and then let's see if we can get some demos failing. So just to take them from the top, no, I'm just going to demo them actually. Let's do that instead. So I have a installation of the secret Umbraco 7.7 RC2. Ooh, which must mean that it's getting quite close. And maybe I can even get online. Yep, sweet. And if we take a look at some of the new features in 7.7, then let's start with one of the less known If I want to create new content here and I say I want to create a home note, then what happens here? It says boilerplate for new sites. Is that a new feature that now you can just click a button and then you can create a new site and we decide how it is? Of course not. It's because I made something called a template, content template, aka the artist formerly known as blueprints. And the idea is basically an easier way to have default content. So now you can turn any page in Umbraco into a set of default content, which means that you can, for large organizations, you might have experienced editors that can make boilerplates of landing pages, etc. For the other editors, or you as developers can make some examples on what a page could look like. So in this case, all I need to do is, if I want to turn, for instance, let's find a product page here. I think there's not enough people with an Umbraco tattoo. In fact, there's too many. Look, how do you think I felt when we changed the color of the logo? It's so unfair for Bob and the 3 others with Umbraco tattoos. But anyway, if I think this is a wonderful boilerplate, then I can just create a content template from this one. Whoops. Like this, and then like this. And then the next time I want to create a product, if I allowed products in my implementation. Really good demo, Nils. Awesome. But look how easy it is to allow products under product. Let's see if we can find it there. Ta-da. Show me a CMS where you can do this fast. So now I will create a product under products. And now I got my content template and I can just select that one, and then I got stuff pre-filled. Really cool feature that was actually developed very closely up to Code Garden by a community member, Lars Erik. He's from Norway. And I've been to Norway more time than Poland, so I'm really practice how to pronounce his name in Norwegian. So when I come back next year to the Polish festival, I'll be really good at pronouncing Polish names. Yesterday I learned that a C is more aggressive, like it's Z or something like that. At least it took quite a while for the cab driver to understand what I meant. Anyway, back to features. How many here are aware of a feature in Umbraco called health checks? Okay, it's a super cool thing that we introduced a couple of versions back, where you could have a set of checks that can sort of explain how your site is doing. You click a button, and then you see some nice green or red lights in different categories depending on how's your site doing. Really nice when you go live to sort of make sure that everything is as it should be. However, things might change after you go live. And maybe you find it kind of boring to go in every Monday morning clicking this button, and maybe every Monday morning isn't enough. So in 7.7 we introduced automated health checks, so you can have health checks going on every hour or every day, and you can automatically get emails or get pinged on Slack if something isn't as it should be. Also a super cool feature. And again, there's a provider model. So if you're like a masochist and think Jira is awesome, then I'm sure you can tie into their workflows and APIs. Very nice. But there's more. I have a pretty complex, it's a starter kit, but it's still kind of complex. It has a lot of features. So let's say I go into products and I want to know what this awesome biker jacket actually has of features. Then I have an endless list of features. I can have as many features as I want. And is that a rich text editor? Of course not, because we like semantic content. Oh, then it's subnodes. Of course not, for that would be silly. It's of course using nested content, you would think, or archetype, or some of these cool packages. But look, I only have the starter kit installed. How is that possible? Ooh, I know you're thinking. Of course, it's because the creators of Nested Content, Lee Kelleher and Matt Brailford, have been so kind that they've donated Nested Content to the core, and Nested Content in 7.7 is a part of the core, including really nice support in Models Builder. So if we actually look at the code needed to show the output from the nested content, then it's really super clean here. Basically just iterate through the features property of on the page. So that's really nice as well. And then of course, the star of 7.7, which is this new user section, which is completely rewritten. It actually started, how many, I got a question. How many here have been missing groups or roles in users in Umbraco? Cool, and I guess the rest of you never used Umbraco before. So that's good. We've always had this. It's always looked like this. No, just kidding. No, it's really been a problem, especially for bigger Umbraco installations and bigger enterprises, that we haven't had built-in role or group support for users in Umbraco. But luckily, there was a community member that was tired of complaining about it, and then he actually did something about it. Andy Butland, he made pretty much a complete implementation of user roles in Umbraco as a pull request, and that really initiated a long-needed overhaul of the user section. The user section is actually the second oldest part of Umbraco. And then you would think, what could be more crappy than the user section? I still have commits in the core because I made the original parts of data types, which is now the oldest part of Umbraco. It's getting removed in version 8, unfortunately. Anyway, back to users. It's not only prettier, it's also we also have these groups. And what is group, you ask? Well, it is groups or roles. You can have an infinite amount, and of course on the different groups you can assign basic security permissions that you'd like. Anything from what apps or sections should be allowed to start node to default permissions. And then let me show you something else. Of course, a user can be a member of an infinite number of user groups. So let's actually invite someone. Can you remember how it used to be to invite a user into Umbraco? So painful, that's the word. We had a painful user feature. How friendly is that? So you used to actually right-click the user section, then create a user. Then you had this weird dialogue that said, what's the name of the user and what's the email? Which is really not useful because it was only like half, or it actually didn't even say user email, it said login. And then you had to fill out more parts, and you had to set individual permissions. And when you were done with that, then you could send an email to someone manually explaining their login and password. Really not friendly. Now it's actually much more friendly. So now I can invite Lewandowski here. Which, by the way, didn't score any goals when Denmark met Poland. We're not going to talk about that one. Leven, Adam, like this. Like this. And then, of course, I can assign any groups I like. So let's just, I mean, he shouldn't really have many permissions. So just send an invite to him. And now he actually got an email. And if I want to, I can go to his profile and even set more permissions. And then you think, why would I set more permissions? Like, what could possibly be more relevant? Maybe I need to set a language. We'll teach him Danish because we score a lot of goals. And then maybe want to assign more start nodes. And then you think, why is that plural? Ooh, because now you can have as many start nodes as you like. So in the old days, you could only set one, but now I can make Lewandowski manage, let's say, people and products. Like this, finally. So this is nice, and now I can save this. And if I then pretend that I'm Lewandowski, and he's using a crappy mail client, like this, look, he can't even click links. That's how bad a player he is. So he has to copy it, and of course, he's using Internet Explorer. Like this, but still it's nice. So unfortunately, we have a mix of Danish and English here because I set his language to Danish, and we'll just make this his password. And then another irritation for larger enterprise have been Umbraco's dependency on gravatars for avatars. It's really kind of ridiculous and really not something that enterprises use. So I can upload a photo, and here's a rare moment where he is apparently happy. And now he's actually invited, and he has access to these notes. Of course, he can see the context of where those notes are, so they're not just stuck in the root. And then you think, that's clever. These guys think of everything. And of course we don't. We released the beta where you could just see the root notes and not the context. And someone said that's a really bad idea. And this is what makes Umbraco great. A clever community that communicates. That's how products gets really good. So that's a quick tour of 7.7. So lots of cool things. We got the awesome user management with user groups, really nice in flows for inviting users. If you need to invite a lot, then I don't know if you noticed, but you can just keep clicking, invite another user. Of course, finally, multiple start nodes and a nice UX, including a really nice way to set custom permissions for individual nodes if you need that. Nested content, along with improvements in the models builder. Schedule health checks, so if there's something wrong with your site, you just get an email or pinged in Slack, and content templates that makes it much easier for editors to create complex sites and pages. And this is just a minor version. It's not 8, it's 7.7, it's just a minor. And then you think, but when? Ooh. It's coming on Tuesday. Yep. And of course, if you think that it's complex to upgrade, maybe if you're on cloud, you just click a button and 30 seconds later you have 7.7. Aha. Anyway, this is just the beginning of what's coming this year. At least we will have betas. There's much more. After CodeGuard, there was a lot of great energy, and improvements have been made in accessibility in Umbraco. We actually saw a working prototype where a blind man at CodeGuard could actually navigate the back office and create and publish content. That was pretty mind-blowing. We're also having something called lessons, which is a built-in guides for how to do things in Umbraco that could both be editor-oriented and developer-oriented way to learn how to use Umbraco in a very hands-on way. And we are working on improving the documentation. Some of you might have seen the surveys we've been running. We now at the HQ have a dedicated stakeholder for documentation. So now it's no longer just talk. It's actually an ongoing process, and documentation will be improved over the coming month, and of course, constantly improving, which is wonderful. Who's the stakeholder? Ilham and Rune. At least all you need to know is that it's not me. So something will actually happen. Anyway, also remember that a lot of what you've seen is not something we made at the HQ. You can also contribute to the project And one of the best things about contributing is that it's not only really wonderful and fun, it also makes you a better developer because you become a part of a pretty big team that constructively do code reviews and spare on how to do things. And that's whether it's tiny things, tiny improvements, or really big things. And then if you think, well, how can I start contributing? Then of course you could come to the UK festival, because the Cogworks have been doing things that I've been dreaming of that the HQ ought to be doing, but Cogworks is actually doing things rather than talking about them. They are facilitating a yearly amazing hackathon where bugs are fixed, and there's actually someone you can talk to. But it's also not that complicated to actually contribute, of course, unless you're Lewandowski. But anyone else is able to do that. A great place to start is by shutting down PowerPoint, so you can actually see what's going on my screen. Why is it freezing? Come on. Yes. This was what I wanted to show you. A great way to start contributing is actually for documentation. If you want to, there's a tiny little edit button in the corner where you can click, and then you actually go to GitHub, and you can basically just fork the documentation. You can try to just change a spelling error or something like that, and then send a pull request, and then you can actually experience it's not that dangerous to contribute, and it's actually friendly people that's behind. If you think that's boring, then you can move on to, for instance, the starter kit. The new starter kit you've been seeing is also, of course, open source and is on GitHub as a project. Very easy to clone it down. Just hit F5 and you're up and running with the starter kit. And if you want to extend it with new features or fix some bugs or just clean up some of the things that's there, you can do that, and you can send a pull request as well. And again, it goes into this code review workflow we have at the HQ, so you actually get really nice sparring on what you're doing. And then of course you can move on to the CMS, etc. But it's actually really fun way to learn, and it's a really great way to evolve as a developer. So I highly encourage you to be a part of the project. Yep. Moving on. Then that was kind of the CMS. Then the next wonderful thing is really this what I would like to call the mature ecosystem or feature ecosystem. So we have a very lean CMS that's not jam-packed with features, but we have a great community that actually shares features. We call them packages, which is technically what they are. But you could also just say that we are actually sharing features. And the cool thing about these features is you can install them if you need them. You can modify them so they fit your project, but also that these extensions are made as a result of real-life projects. I love, for instance, how Cogworks shared their search and replace feature for Umbraco, because that was a real need they had. It's kind of the downside of being a software vendor, is you're quite far away from the people that actually ends up using your software. We're trying to reach out to them, but it's you as developers, as agencies, that are actually in close contact with the editors. And Cogworks just had these big organizations that had very strict rules for how things should be spelled, and basically just really huge sites. So if something changed, it was quite a lot of work to actually find the places and of course also replace them. So they made this little tool. And they shared it as a package, as open source, which is absolutely amazing. And it's so cool that you can just go to the back office and you can actually install that feature. So I guess you know all about how it works, but still, I still find it kind of mind-blowing that if I, for instance, wanted to add personalization features to my site, I can search for personalization, I can install a package, again, this time from Andy Butlin, and with relatively little code and effort, I suddenly can personalize content based on location, time of day, frequency of visits, referrers, etc. So really massive and some in some way underrated strength of Umbraco that we kind of combine this very tight, lean CMS with a really huge feature ecosystem. And I absolutely love that even big companies and also Cogworks being a gold partner actually also still not only contribute with money organizing events like this, but also actually open source and shares some of their work. It's absolutely amazing. Next thing is that we have this cloud platform, which we kind of like to coin as a key for predictability. It's a really big thing for clients that there's so many uncertainties in a digital project that if you can limit just some of them through technology, then it gives more time and more room for the things that are much more complex. That's really the dream of Umbraco Cloud. It's this idea that you can actually have this easy way of getting started with a project, a really easy way to work in teams, an easy way to deploy between environments, etc. So in this case, I got a site running on cloud. I can actually see what's been going on the site. I can easily clone it down locally if I want to. If I need to invite a coworker to help me with some CSS, I just click a button, I invite that person, and that person gets access to not only just the Umbraco install, but also the source code repository, and there's a way to actually share code between us, and a nice workflow for that as well. Then if we are more people on a project, maybe I want to add a development environment. Again, I click a button and there's a clone of my live site being made as a separate Umbraco installation with a separate file system and a separate database. Again, complete with Git access that we can collaborate in. So we work locally, we push out changes up to the development environment, and from there we could then push it to the live environment or even to a staging environment, all with very little effort and not something where I need to know anything about infrastructure, which I really think is super nice. I can also always just create new projects if I need to, and a new project again. It's everything that's needed to run an Umbraco site setup, and I can even choose a baseline, which is an existing project that I use as a boilerplate for my new site. When I work locally and I want to push things, I can just queue content. So whether that's code changes or changes to the schema or even content, I can just push that between environments and share with my colleagues. And also at any time when I'm working locally, I can click a button and I can get the latest content from live down to my local machine. So I'm actually testing my code changes or my bug fixes with real content and not lorem ipsum. So I really think what we're doing with cloud actually ties really nicely into what we're trying to do with the CMS, which is make an easy way for people to collaborate and spend time on what really matters, which isn't installing Umbraco, setting up servers, managing scaling, working in teams, finding ways to deploy things, and again, not doing it every time a new version of Umbraco comes. So that's really nice, and we are keep improving the cloud. We are rolling out new features on cloud every second Tuesday. So some of the things we've been doing this year is a completely new deployment engine, rewritten from scratch and optimized for cloud, based on more than 10,000 deployments that's been made on the cloud platform. We recently launched a REST API for creating new projects. So as a part of your automation workflow, you can actually, whether that's from your internal project tool, you can just say new project and a cloud site will be ready, and you can invite colleagues through code as well. We're rolling out deployment webhooks now, so every time a deployment happens, On cloud, you can actually have a webhook, so you can automate things, whether that's just pinging your Slack that a deployment has been made, or whether you actually have some post-deployment testing you want to make, like running Selenium tests or whatever on your site every time you make a deploy. We improved this thing called baselines, which is this really cool way, I mentioned it briefly, but that you can have one site that's sort of a master for new Umbraco installations, and actually if you need to make updates to that baseline, then you make them in one Umbraco installation and you can push them to all the subsites. Now you can also select what subsites should have new features, for instance. So you can actually make new features in one Umbraco installation, and then you can automatically push them to selected ones. And of course, one of the most used features on Umbraco Cloud is the automated upgrades. When it comes to patch upgrades, you get them automatically, but when 7.7 comes out on Tuesday, you get a little notification and you just click a button, and then within 30 seconds you are actually upgraded to 7.7. And as a part of that, Cloud has automatically tested that everything works on your site. And of course, despite that we keep pushing new features and better servers, etc., then we kept the same low prices, which is 25 euros a month, and actually down to 20 euros if you sign up as a cloud reseller. Do I have 5 or 10 minutes left? Ish. Okay, cool. Then finally, the final thing is this idea. I talked about features, but if you really then take big features such as commerce platforms, etc., then I love that we are doing best of breed rather than a suite. So we are simple CMS. We don't have marketing features. We don't have commerce engines, personalization engines. But there's a ton of people and companies doing this. Also, companies that doesn't have anything to do with Umbraco. So whether that's e-commerce or whether that's legacy systems, or even if it's new SaaS tools, then it's really easy to extend Umbraco with these things. And if we just look in the commerce space, then rather than we had Umbraco Commerce, you were kind of forced to use that one. Then because commerce projects are really, it's really a lot of different things. Some commerce projects are very simple. It's just putting things in a basket, check out, and then someone manually handles a lot of things afterwards. It could also be really complex, where you actually need to use a product information system on top of Umbraco. And then, of course, when I talk to potential Umbraco customers and they ask about commerce projects, I always ask, do you actually have a commerce project or do you have an integration project? Because usually they have an integration project, and that's the really hard part of a commerce project. And that's a story on its own. And I just love that we have uCommerce, who's like built an entire company around providing really great, I guess it's called 360 commerce on Umbraco, so handling anything from product catalogs and basically PIM to checkout and integration with ERPs. Then we have Marcello, which is a completely open source platform for making commerce on Umbraco. We have T-commerce for really simple, relatively simple commerce projects, which is makes it very easy if you already know Umbraco. Then the way they structure their product catalogs and the way their APIs works is very similar to Umbraco. And recently we also had Struct, which is a company that does dedicated product information management, or PIM. I think there should be a product information management protocol, just so you could say that you're a pimp. Or you could also ask, if people doing PIM, are they pimps? Anyway, I told you I would bring bad jokes, and I've not even had shots yet. Anyway, they also have this, and their product can do really advanced things, like if you, let's say that you need to provide nutrition information, it's getting mandatory in the UK, then you can actually have nutrition information on ingredients, and then it can automatically calculate and show nutrition info on different goods depending on their dependencies. So e-commerce is a lot of things, and that's why I love that in Umbraco you're not stuck to one commerce platform, but you have a huge variety of platforms. And again, just some examples, cutting edge knives. It's a simple T-commerce project. You can buy knives. It's really beautiful, and it's super simple. To a large installation here, which is Wolters Kluwer, which is, you might not know them, but they are, I think it's 25,000 plus people doing books for auditors. But it's a huge business, and they're rolling out a multi-million-dollar cloud project on Umbraco Cloud and UCommerce after 9 months of basically evaluation project where they've more or less tested almost anything on the market, from Sitecore and Drupal commerce platforms to Umbraco, and Umbraco and UCommerce came out on top on almost all parameters. Then this is one of my favorite projects. It's a Danish company called Årstiderne, or The Seasons. They deliver organic ingredients and meal boxes to tens of thousands of Danish families. These started out on another CMS, Voldemort CMS, and I was actually a part of that project almost 15 years ago. And now they're switching, now they're coming home, which is really nice. Per and I went up there, I think it was actually almost 2 years ago, to demo how far Umbraco had come. And we went to the small office where I was sitting doing this absolutely awful implementation of Voldemort CMS. That was nice. Also, something completely different, a Danish or Scandinavian electronic chain called Power. This is really where I can say buzzwords. It's omni-channel commerce. And with deep SAP integration and a real-time pricing robot. What it basically means is it's totally crazy. This is the grid editor. You might know it, but their editor can actually search for products in their SAP installation, and they can just drag them into the grid editor, and they can actually see what the products will look like with data coming from a product information management system. Then you think, can it be cooler? Yes, and it can be complicated. Look at this. If anybody ever asked, is Umbraco ready for enterprise, just show them this screenshot. Basically what they can do, they can change the price in Umbraco. It will update their SAP, and in the stores, their e-ink displays will update. It's pretty cool. So basically, any type of commerce in Umbraco is possible thanks to this best-of-breed strategy we have. And then finally, we are no longer afraid to say it out loud. For a long time, the communication in Umbraco has been very developer-oriented, very geeky, but now we finally got a dedicated communication and marketing department. I like to call them the propaganda department. They don't like that. They call themselves COMA, which is communication and online marketing astronauts. But what it basically means is it's some wonderful people that can actually show you all the great things and communicate all the great things going on in Umbraco, including a new tour section, umbraco.com/tour. It's work in progress. We're trying to work with communication and marketing a bit like we do with Umbraco, actually get things out there as early as possible, get feedback. So in this case, it's quite text heavy, but we actually finally have a lot of information. There's more than 80 features covered now around what Umbraco can do. And from here, we can actually team up with a design agency to make it really beautiful and wonderful. But there's now actually a place when clients ask, what can Umbraco do? There's actually a place you can go, and you can either steal some of the text for your presentation, or you can just lead clients there to actually see how impressive Umbraco is today. Also coming very soon is a dedicated case study area on umbraco.com where our partners can create great stories, really rich stories about great Umbraco case story or great Umbraco sites out there. Again, this means that if you ever need to go to a pitch, then you're going to be able to go there, look for, as you can see up here, you can sort of filter it by sectors or by by type of site, and then you actually have a couple of samples you can give to a client. Really wonderful. And of course, that's in addition to all the stuff they are doing, writing U-News, updating all our social media things, etc. So it's really nice that now the world can actually start realizing how absolutely awesome Umbraco is. And then finally, I have some sneak peeks. And I was so afraid that I would be making demo fails that I'm actually being really boring, and I recorded them. Yeah, I know. But yeah, here goes. First thing is, everybody talks about machine learning, and we've been playing a little bit about how could we use machine learning or artificial intelligence in a clever way in the back office. And one idea was, one of the things we really often see is that the media library is, after a while, is really cluttered. We have this nice flow where you can just upload images as you write text. You don't have to go to a dedicated media library. The downside is that sometimes the media library just really gets unorganized, etc. So we've thought, what if we could use machine learning and artificial intelligence to automatically organize your media library for you? And here's a little example. You can see we have some folders in the on the left side, not the folders on my machine, but in a second I will pause this. No! I'm not really good at using video. I should just do it live. This is the penalty for being a chicken, right? Let's see if we can get this rolling again. Come on. I'm just gonna demo it live. And then you can get the video when it doesn't work. Let's see, I think it's this one. I hope. And while we wait for that, look at the tour. Ah, so nice. So much content. Anyway, let's see if I can remember my password. No! I told you there would be demo fails. I also brought the salty licorice, and anyone laughing will have to eat them. We'll show the video. It was also getting too smooth, wasn't it? Like, you wouldn't really believe what was going on. Can I fast forward in this when I have? Anyway, I have some folders on the left side. I pick some pictures of food, someone playing football. It uploads the photos. It takes a little longer because it's actually sending them to Microsoft Cognitive Services, making sure that we actually understand what's in the photos. Now it's done uploading in a second, and you think, panic! It didn't upload anything. We're still working on the UI. But now, because it knows that this is a group of men playing a game of football, it actually can identify. We had a category called sport. It matches some tags. We've put it in the sport folder. And really, if I was just an editor uploading photos while I was editing, I wouldn't even notice because my photo is automatically inserted into the text anyway, but I don't have to worry about a completely unorganized media library anymore. It's kind of an example of how we could actually use artificial intelligence in a meaningful way. That said, artificial intelligence, it's like it's slowly peaking at about 5-year level, right? Let me show you a photo. I'm so disappointed that I cannot demo this. I will demo it in the lunch break. But look at, I have a picture here. Let's see. Of Kim, our famous COO. And this is a picture of Kim, let's see, this one. So, whoops, you can't see it. Beautiful, sorry. This is a picture of Kim. It identifies him as a man. A manly man. Which is kind of correct. And then it looks at the rest of the photo and say, it looks like a plate. Which would be kind of okay. And this is where artificial intelligence is slowly peaking at 5 years, lots of 5 years. And then says, there's a man, there's a plate. It actually writes a man sitting on a plate, which I kind of love. Anyway, one day we will all love artificial intelligence, but it's actually quite fun. Another thing that we can do is we can identify that you've uploaded an image that had a lousy file name, and we can then rename that file into something meaningful. Like rather than imk underscore a number.jpg, we could actually make a group of men playing football.jpg. Nice for SEO. So that's one thing. Another thing is we're really playing with this idea of how can we extend the way Umbraco is used, both the scenarios where you can use Umbraco and who can use Umbraco. Because it's no secret that there's an extreme shortage of Umbraco developers, which is really nice for all of you. You have so much work to do. The salaries are really nice, but we need to be careful that it's not peaking at a level where people will go somewhere else, right? So there's two things that could be fun to see if we could if we could challenge. One is, what if you could use Umbraco for other things than just websites? And then you would be like, but people have been doing that for ages. Yes, but it's required lots of coding. Let's say you wanted to use Umbraco as a CMS for your mobile data, but then you just create a web API. Yes, but who does that? And who knows that you can do that? And who does it when a new version of Umbraco comes, etc. Or let's say that you have a lot of front-enders. And front-enders today are really good at JavaScript. What if they could do an Umbraco implementation, not having to know about Razor, not having to know about C# and Lambda expressions, but could actually just use Node.js and the things they're used to already if the sites are simple. So we've been working on this idea of buzzword time, a headless version of Umbraco. Ooh. And for ages I've been saying, but Umbraco is as headless as you need, which is correct, but you still need to install Umbraco, you need to host it somewhere, you need to create a REST API, then you need to find ways to consume that REST API, etc. And it would be kind of much cooler if we could make an easy way to do that. So we've been making this another version of Umbraco Cloud that's much closer to SaaS, where you use the CMS part of Umbraco, but then you actually get a nice REST API plus really nice Node.js APIs or wrappers to consume that kind of data. So here's a small demo. Whoops. I'm really good at using video. Here's a small demo. I have this, or Per has this Umbraco website running on cloud. It's the classic starter kit, as you know it. He's working on his Mac using Visual Studio Code for Mac OS. And then he enters in the Node.js client. He basically just adds the URL for the cloud site and the token. As you can see here, I don't know if I can pause this. Well, anyway, in this implementation, we're using Express.js. You can have JavaScript controllers, just like you can have ASP.NET MVC controllers. Completely in the same way, you can modify, manipulate the model you're sending to the JavaScript view, like this. And again, we're using an open standard called HAL, which sends back something called a representation. So we're using, for the REST API, we are actually using a protocol that's completely documented and well-known. In this case, Per has added handlebars as the template engine, a really simple template engine that a lot of JavaScript people know. You can just swap it with another kind of JavaScript template engine if you like. And you can do stuff like for each, and actually you're requesting live Umbraco data from the cloud side. Once you're happy with that, you can set breakpoints. Have anybody tried using Node.js with Visual Studio Code recently? The experience is insanely good. So in this case, we can set breakpoints. We can start up the site in a minute. And then we can work locally with our code on any platform we like, using Umbraco data. As we know, let's just see if the site is starting up. We got the breakpoint. It's hit. We got the data back from the REST API. Let's just continue here. Thank you, Per. And you can see we get the live data, and it's basically an implementation of the starter kit as you know it. We're going to add support for Umbraco Forms as well, so you can basically send data back and forth between Umbraco Forms, again from Node.js. And once Per's done, he's basically just going to push it to a Heroku site to roll it out live. Again, because he's pretending to be a front-ender that doesn't need to know anything about Umbraco and basically just use the tools that he's used to and want to work the way he's used to. So this is kind of it's work in progress. We are experimenting. We don't even know if it's going to be turned into something that other people can use right now. But it's kind of an idea from the R&D lab where we're trying to find ways to make it easier for everyone in agencies to contribute to Umbraco projects. And the background for this is that the way Umbraco became successful back in the days was as this Trojan horse for big organizations. So the big organizations used Voldemort-type CMSs, these big monolith clusterfucks of feature junk, and it was really difficult for organizations to quickly spin up new sites or marketing sites. Then someone said, I've been using Umbraco at my, I don't know, for home, for my wedding site. Can I use that for our marketing site? And they could actually implement Umbraco much faster than any other site. Their editors loved Umbraco, and then it actually was used for the rest of the organization. And now we are not a clusterfuck of a CMS, but we are actually getting widely adopted. We're used in lots of big organizations. We are also used for some of these huge projects, and we really want to make sure that Umbraco won't get stuck as this CMS that's really easy to use and is the fastest to roll up on the market. And we really think that rather than agencies starting to use other types of headless CMSs or simple static site generators for simple sites, then we're like, what if they could keep using Umbraco also for very simple sites, and some of their other junior people could actually contribute to Umbraco projects as well. And the best thing about this is it is an Umbraco project. So if it ever needs to grow even bigger, then you can just flip a switch and the headless version of Umbraco just activates the template engine and everything you're used to know in an Umbraco site. And as a partner, you don't have to support multiple CMSs when your customers call and need to know, who knows about this weird static site generator or this weird headless CMS and how that admin interface works. Plus, you can use Umbraco for lots of other things, from mobile apps to just help text in WPF applications, etc. And it doesn't become a big project. It's basically just create new project on cloud, choose headless option, and you're already going. For now, we have a experimental API for or implementation for Node.js. We're going to look into having the same for .NET Standard, so you could use Umbraco for .NET Core projects, etc. Again, it's lab things. If you want to try it out, get in touch, send me an email, or just reach me here. And again, it's a thing from the lab. We don't know if it's ever going to become a real thing, but it's looking very promising. And with that, that's all, folks. Questions? Do we have time for questions? We have time for questions. Anyone who asks a question don't have to eat a habanero salty licorice. And I have plenty. There's enough for everyone.